Morning for morning, I was casually destroying my self-esteem and worth, aka using Twitter, when one day I saw an advert that would change my life for the next few months. Tiffany Witcher's Game to End Lupus Tournament starts on May 6th and had a custom ban list to make it more in line with the TCG. This was a charity tournament to raise charity for the Lupus Foundation of America to help end this chronic disease. I knew I had to sign up for it and show my support. But there was a small issue to the fact this was in Master Duel, a gotcha game that I didn't play, I didn't want to spend money in, and that I barely knew how to play YuGiOh. Oh, also, did I mention the fact that I had 3 weeks to prepare for this? This is how I became a competitive duelist in less than a month. I started up the game and immediately I had a choice to make me think that I would be kind of stuck with it going forward. Which structure deck should I pick? At the start of the game, you need to choose between the Power of Dragon structure deck, Synchro of Unity, and Link Generations. I choose Dragons and immediately start on a solo mission to start grinding up gems, to pay currency in the game. Solo tutorials give you about 200 per completion, which would be very useful for getting cards. That is until I went into the shop. Now, I knew that you have packs that let you do 10 pulls per 1,000 gems. What I didn't know was that they had a structure deck for 500, and that one of these was the Vortex of Magic structure deck, the home of the Dark Magician. Now, I knew which deck I had to play. For context, before this point, I've only played Yu-Gi-Oh! A few times with my friends a few years ago and once on stream. And all those times, the only archetypes I used were Chainburn and Dark Magician. So I figured since I was familiar with the archetype itself, I have the best chance with using the Dark Magician archetype. Now, as I knew it at the time, there were 3 problems with Dark Magician. 1. It was very vulnerable to backline blowout due to Eternal Soul. And before you ask, no, I was not aware of Eternal Soul and Dragon Knight combo at this time, even though I did have it in the deck list. I thought Feather Duster was banned, so I figured it would be easier to play, but it'd still be a bit of a hassle to deal with, since there are plenty of cards that are able to target background. Oh, and also Secret Village is banned as well, so that was a bit of an issue. 2. There aren't many heavy hitters in this deck that I knew of. The one I knew about was Quintet and Dark Dragoon, but spoiler alert, Dark Dragoon wasn't even in Master Duel, and Quintet is pretty hard to summon, especially in games that won't last too long. So big power problems. It didn't have anything that hit over 2,500. 3. Negates and effects are heavy issues, since Pure Dark Magician doesn't have many of those. So I have to play really carefully around negates. All in all, I bought 3 of those decks, and I think I made something that was semi-competent. Before I could tell you what I put in it, let's talk about some runner-ups that almost made the cut. Mist Body was the only equipped spell that I considered bringing in, since it's basically made any and all defensive monsters very strong in defense mode. Sounds perfect for Dark Magician. That's until I realized how unreliable it was. Not that the effect itself is unreliable, it will do what it said, but I needed a good mix of drawing Dark Magician, resummoning them, and drawing out my support cards. And I was basically too worried that I wouldn't get the spell when I needed it. It's not exactly very searchable with something like Soul Servants, so I couldn't really rely on that. Another was Twin Burst, but since that is in my opening hand, made it practically useless, I didn't want it to brick. I already knew that searchability was a big issue for the Dark Magician archetype, so that was definitely out. Magician's Combination was one that I would use if I knew what it did. I know how it works now, but at the time, I thought it wasn't getting to anywhere, so with the field spell I'd get to in a second, I didn't keep that in my deck. Now, for what did make it. Some of the highlights include the obvious: Ash Blossom, Eternal Soul, Magician's Soul, Rod, Timaeus and Eye of Timaeus, Dark Magician's Circle, Soul Servant, the whole 9 yards. I also added Magician's Salvation spell so that I was able to get an Eternal Soul back into my hand and increase my defensive capabilities so that I couldn't be overpowered. However, there were a few support cards that aren't very common. I needed board wipes, so I added Dark Magic Attack and Bond between Teacher and Student, along with the other two for a full board clear. I needed some negates as well. So I added 3, then lowered them to 2, Solemn Judgments, and 2 Destined Rivals. With that, a lot of my deck felt complete, but I felt like I was missing something. My extra deck in particular felt extra naked. Yeah, I had Dark Magicians and the Knights, but I was missing out on that punching power. I asked some people who were far more experienced what I could do, and they said one thing. Did you put in Blackluster Soldier? For those of you who are wondering, Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, has 3 effects after it destroys a monster. Either gain 1,500 attack points, banish another card, or attack twice the next turn. Oh yeah, I found that punching power. Even during the tournament, it was one of my more used cards for clashing or killing big threats. I also added Axis Code Talker, and after looking some stuff up, if I use Blackluster Soldier, I can not only increase its power to 5,300, but I can also remove a card from a board with Axis Code's effect. So I finally got my punch, but I didn't have a good way to get rid of effects. And I got a few negates. However, it's situational on my deck. Now I needed something to help with the back row. And this was a problem I didn't really solve. I only really learned about how good Dragon Knight was for that later, but I've dealt with Eternal Soul weeks before. I can do it again. At this point, it's been about 2 weeks since building and practicing the deck. I made a few changes and added a few cards, like Starving Venom Fusion Dragon and Relinquish Anima. It was at this time to actually play the game. I learned a few things. First off, my win cons being Dark Magic Circle, Blackluster Soldier, and Axis Code. Quintet was also a great card for when I was losing a duel, being able to clear boards with its effect. I actually streamed myself testing out some of the actual star cards at the time. It had been Illusion Magician, the second to last card I added to my deck. And a Twitch chatter actually taught me how to use the card correctly. Not using 2 Dark Magicians, but using 1 other spellcaster and 1 Dark Magician so that I could actually use its effect. But I still found one thing to be missing. I didn't have a way to shuffle cards in. I could destroy and I could banish, but some decks like banishing. So I wanted a way to put things into the deck. I then added 1 copy of Drowning Mirror Force to my deck, and thus I figured I was ready to fight. Disclaimer: unfortunately, due to the nature of Master Duel and me not knowing that Master Duel saves replays automatically, before the tournament I didn't get to save my replays. The 3rd duel can't be shown, but some of the replays will have some issues, and this is why. In this case, let's get started. The first duel I actually got to go first and was almost immediately punished for my mistakes. I was able to immediately summon out Dark Magician by using the Preparation of Right spell, pulling out my Illusion of Chaos and scrying a Magician's Soul. I even got an Eternal Soul on the field, with Magician's Salvation as well. I feel like I was absolutely in the clear, so I put my Dark Magician in attack mode. This was my first mistake, and it cost me the duel. I then passed to his turn. He tried to pull out another card. Now, in my defense, I knew about baits, so I figured I should ask block him after this one, as this was probably a bait. Second strike. And since my Dark Vision was in attack mode, I was not able to defend myself from the 12,200 damage Onslaught Massacre. This was the level I was fighting in with pure Dark Magician. Needless to say, I was shaken, nervous even. I wanted to get some wins. I worked for quite a bit in practice a lot for this thing. A signed baby dragon was at stake. But I try to shake it off. It happens in Yu-Gi-Oh! Heck, it was one of the reasons I dropped the game originally. My confidence did improve a little bit though, because there was one friend who was super confident in hearing that I used Dark Magician. Because apparently they made a Blue Eyes deck specifically to counter Dark Magicians. Why would that make me confident exactly? Because if there was one archetype I had experience in fighting, it was Blue Eyes. This second duel honestly had a familiar start to the first one, but I had an interesting out. I knew he would be weak if I could activate it before he brought a Jet Dragon. I just placed and set my cards, and all I had to do was wait. I summoned my Dark Magician, and he brought out his Blue Eyes. But he ended his turn. I was never sure if he did this due to arrogance, or if he seriously just couldn't attack, or if it was a bait due to a risky play. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to take too many risks after that first game. I used Soul Servant to bring out more cards just in case he could respond, and after my draw, and getting Eternal Magician's Soul, I knew exactly what I had to do. I played Bond between teacher and student, set Dark Burning Magic, and Link summoned Blackluster Soldier. Now, I wasn't sure what True Light was, and I didn't know that it kept spawning Blue Eyes, so I opted to crash. Thankfully, he didn't read and wasted his Mirror Force, so I was able to pull this off. I then used Secrets of Dark Magic to fuse the Dark Magician I brought back and my Illusion of Dark Magician to summon the Dark Magicians in attack mode, baiting an attack. The man even went for Chaos Max Dragon to try to avoid getting destroyed by any effects, but he went for the bait, breaking my Magicians into Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. And as he went for another attack, he should have known.
The game was rigged from the start.
I was able to win pretty swiftly after popping True Light. It took about 2 turns, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to count my chickens before they hatched. That being said, it was a really nice win for me. I'm not gonna lie, after that last one, this one was kind of needed so that I had a little less fear in my play. I even got this moment captured on stream that was being shown on. And I was cheered on by Tiff's husband, Malice, because they use Dark Magician fairly often as well. And I actually had a lot of fun, which I'm glad that I did, because these next matches weren't going to be as pretty. As I said before, the third duel can't be shown, but due to how I scored, I can tell you this one was a loss. So, to not waste any more time, let's go over to the fourth duel. Not gonna lie, Duel 4 was super easy. I opened up with an insane hand, and I got to set up Eternal Soul and Dark Magician round 1. The opponent did eventually summon out a pretty tough monster despite my negation, however, it wasn't too hard to take out, especially since they took out my Dark Magician. Even still, I used Eternal Soul to bring 1,000 knives to my hand just in case. So next turn, when I top deck Soul Servant, I pulled Dark Magic Circle, resummoned Dark Magician, and banished the Fusion Amazoness. However, they did send a 3,000 attack monster back onto the field. And there it goes. However, it was a pretty open and shut case from there. I used my Illusion of Chaos to bring out another Dark Magician using Magician's Souls and hit for 5,000. They set up more back row, so I tried to use Eternal Soul to bring out my Dark Magician attack to clear the back row. They tried to resummon their Amazoness, keyword being tried, and set a monster in defense mode. Too bad I was able to overpower them and then obtain victory. Fun fact, do you know that it is a big issue with Dark Magician is heavy combo decks if they don't have Dark Magic Circle on the field? Anyway, on to the next game. Immediately, I realized that my hand was garbage. I legitimately could only send Magician's Robe and pass. This felt horrible because my opponent was trying to start up a combo and I could only Ash Blossom and pray. I stopped them for 1 turn, but remember, my hand is garbage. Place, pass. I tried to just wait for the spawn in Dark Magician, but Moldolches said no. And then buffed themselves for lethal. Fuck! Not gonna lie, this hurt. Not only was my positive run dead, it was dead due to me getting unlucky. I wanted, nay, was determined to win this next duel. Thank goodness I did some training a few days before this, because I would never have been able to do so without it. This next enemy was actually hyped up in the VC I was in as well, saying that this guy's penguins ran over quite a few of the people in the VC, but I was not deterred. My opponent starts first and immediately wanted to draw some cards. I said no, seemingly heavily nerfing their hand, and they didn't have a negating field on the board, but it did make one I did not want to send to the graveyard. I was really afraid of that face down card, so I did what Dark Magicians do best. Bring out my Dark Magic Circle and start banishing. Now I couldn't really confidently swing at the 2,800 defense monster on the field, but I did have an interesting idea. I used Secret of Dark Magic to ritual summon my level 7 Illusion of Chaos and sent Dark Magicians to my graveyard. They special summoned a penguin, and I immediately said no to that by banishing the monster, powering everything up. They can only crash into my rod, and I finally got to put my plan into motion. I could finally summon Ebon Illusion Magician, the ultimate banishing monster. I used one material and sent my Dark Magician to the grave again to summon my other Dark Magician. Was I playing a little too careful? Maybe. But I was nervous at this point. I really wanted to win, and from what I see, I didn't want to win. I needed to dominate. And I was glad I did. The last turn he tried to pull was spawning 2 monsters. Ones that when flipped destroyed a trap, and one that when flipped destroyed a monster. Unfortunately for them, I had 2 ways to make sure everything went my way. I pulled out Bond between parent and student, and set Dark Burning Attack, and used it to destroy 1 monster. I used Thousand Knives to kill the second one, and Ebon's effect to banish the third. And with that, it was all over. Except he had one big last play to make. Harpy's Feather Duster. The one reason that made me nervous to even play this archetype at all. But now I had a way out that was already set up. See, one thing I neglected to mention about Magician's Rod is that you are able to tribute 1 monster you control and add that card to your hand while it's in the graveyard. And he had nothing in his hand to counter this. I finally win. I went 3-3 and apparently went 14th overall. When the competition was about 42 people, I think that means I did pretty well, especially for a beginner. Overall, it was pretty fun. Sure, there were some games that did come down to a coin flip or a good hand, but finding a way to stay on top or gain advantage in the heat of a moment was incredibly awesome. Just too bad it feels like fighting the gates is a headache in and of itself. And thus, my Yu-Gi-Oh journey has finally come to a close. Or has it? I need your help. Tiffany Witcher, the woman who hosted this first tournament, plans on hosting a second one named VTubers for Hope. But I'm looking to play a new deck. Not sure which, though. That's where you all come in. On Twitter, I've made a poll to see which type of deck I should make. Salamangreats, Trap Tricks, Dragon Maids, or Karibos. Please let me know by filling out the Twitter poll that's going to be linked below, or the YouTube poll that's going to be on the channel. If in any event, thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!